Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Revenge is Ice Cream. First story today is a bit more serious as it deals with themes of sexual assault and stalking. So I think we'll lose the jaunty music on this one. This one is Catfish Me, Cool, I'll Catfish You Back by Strangly Stormy 666. So the title is honestly a bit of an oversimplification. When I was 14, I was stalked, catfished, groomed, SA'd, emotionally abused, and overall heavily manipulated by an upperclassman to the point where at the time, I didn't know what was even real anymore. He even hit me once. Let's call him D. Even after the abuse was over, he still did everything he could to keep me isolated. He knew that this was hard for me to talk about and that only a few of my closest friends knew the details. He tried to get my best friends, and it almost worked with a few of them. Thankfully, it didn't end up working in the end, so when he realized that was a bust, he started working on other friends that were less likely to know about this. People who I loved dearly, but people who I just couldn't bring myself to talk about this. He went to them before I could, told them that I was the abuser, that I was the stalker. And when I tried to tell them the truth, he said that I was just lying about him to cover up the abuse that I supposedly inflicted on him. He would tell them horrible, detailed stories about things he'd said I'd done to him. The sick part is that every single one of the stories he told were true, but in reverse. He had done those exact things to me. For example, one time he blew up my mom's phone, feigning concern for my mental health, and suggesting she should have me placed in a mental facility. But by the time I got to school the next day and tried to hug one of my friends, she pushed me away and said, "Nah, don't touch me, I know what you did to Dee." And when I asked her what she thought I'd done, he told her that I was the one to contact his mom trying to get him institutionalized. The kicker, he'd faked screenshots to prove it, using one of those apps where you can get a fake phone number. Bro is truly a master of manipulation to the point where it's bloody terrifying. I could see him using the same damn tactics on these girls that he did with me, and it made me sick. He really got obsessed with one of them in particular, and I could see that this was building up to be another victim. We'll call her S. At this point, she hated me because of the lies he had told her about me, but I didn't care. I could see this ramping up and I just wanted her to be safe. I needed proof of the kind of person he was to get her away from him. All of them, really, but especially her. But what could I do? I didn't have any proof. He had manipulated me into deleting all the concrete evidence I had against him. How, you may ask? That's a whole other can of worms for a different post altogether. But let's just say this dude had me massively brainwashed. That's when I remembered the catfishing part of what he put me through. He used to do it for multiple different reasons, mostly just to manipulate me, tear down my self-esteem, and warp my sense of reality in multiple ways. One of his favorite things to do was pretend to be people from school, and just hardcore bully me over the deepest insecurities, only to comfort me as himself, so I'd feel like he was the only person I had. But another big thing he used these personas for was to get information about me that he could use. In those cases, he'd pretend to be an online friend for a while, gain my trust, and ask me seemingly casual questions about my day, plans where I was going later, etc. He'd then coincidentally show up in places he knew I'd be. So this is where I decided to give him a small taste of his own medicine. The Revenge. I set up a fake Instagram profile, picked a girl he would have been into. She was a model, but a very underground one, who really only has a following in another country. This allowed me to get several pictures to make it look real, without running the risk that he would recognize her. I said something in the bio about how she got locked out of her old account to make the fact that it was created recently seem less sus. I said she was a college student from the other side of the country. I followed the school, several organizations within it, and several students. I posted several selfies, pictures of the campus, some random quotes, and some other stuff to make it look real. Then I started following a bunch of accounts that I knew he interacted with. Meme and fandom pages mostly. I spaced out my posts over the course of several days, interacted with a bunch of the accounts I followed, waited for several of them to follow me back. I made sure the account didn't look suspiciously new, and then, after a few days, I followed his account. I made sure to make it seem like I had just found his account because we followed several of the same accounts. Then I finally started interacting with his posts. I made a few comments that I knew would fuel his ego, and waited for him to reach out to me. It didn't take long. He direct messaged me asking to be friends within hours of my last comment. I fed into every lie he told me, acted like a friend, just like he had done with me, with his personas. And the dude just wouldn't shut up. He went on and on about the sexual relationship he supposedly had with S. This was not true. He's always done this, when he has an obsession with someone and is trying to manipulate them. But it's taking a while, he will talk about his fantasies as if they're reality. I'd already seen him do this multiple times, and knew exactly what this was. The way he talked about her and a few of the other people I was also worried about, but mostly her, was absolutely vile. I kept up the act for a few weeks until I was 100% positive I had enough evidence, and I discovered a lot more than I had even anticipated. I don't want to get into the other stuff too much, but it was bad. This dude was so obsessed with one of our lunch ladies. It was to the point where she was scared for her and her children's safety, but she didn't know what to do about it because she didn't have proof, but after what he said to me, I did. After I had everything I needed, I screenshotted everything and then deleted the account. I sent the screenshots about S to a mutual friend of ours, since at this point me and her were no contact. Explained the situation, and she was horrified. She sent all the screenshots to S, and S was clearly even more horrified. She blocked him on everything and apologized to me profusely for believing him over me. Then I sent my mom all the screenshots I had about the lunch lady. I didn't know how to go about sharing these with her because, well, she was my lunch lady. Luckily for me, though, my mom is a hairstylist, and just so happened to be her stylist. So my mom spilled all the beans at their next appointment. This is when it came out how scared this poor woman had been of him. The screenshots got around, and everyone I had been worried about managed to get away from him. By doing what I did, everyone around him finally saw his true colors, and he lost pretty much everybody he had under his control at the time. If you keep playing with fire, eventually you're gonna get burned. Every time I think about it, I smile. I managed to protect so many people from going through what I went through or worse, and in the process I gave him a tiny sliver of a taste of his own damn medicine. I'd like to hope that he was paranoid for a good while after that, just like I was. And the second story today is Revenge is a Dish Best Served with a Separate Check by It's Andrew Buck. Over a decade or so ago, when my wife, 65, female, and I, 60, male, lived in upstate New York, we lived across the road from a nice older couple that were at least a dozen or so years senior to my wife, so we were obviously younger at the time. While I'm out talking across the road from him, Joey and Linda decided it was time that they invite the neighbors out to dinner. We both figured we weren't being social enough in the neighborhood, and it's good to have friendly neighbors, so we accepted with our mistaken intent. First time was a Friday evening. We were both coming directly from work, so we met at the local Italian place he raved about. One thing to know about my wife and I are that we are not huge eaters and generally don't drink when out because, well, driving, and my wife isn't crazy about alcohol. So we ordered modestly, and our agreement was to just split the bill. We ordered just mains and one starter. My wife and I would share them. They decide to go full bore, starting with drinks. Each orders a starter, then go for mains and desserts to top it off. We quickly figured out we were getting screwed on this deal, so we ordered desserts and the bill came in. They forked over exactly half, plus tipping on the low side. We picked up the rest. Not too pleased with it, but we endured it, and it wasn't extremely expensive, so we let it slide and knew the lay of the land. Next few times a week hence, we drove together to a place along the Hudson River, and already knew that we were taking a hit on this, so I pulled Joe aside and said, "Hey, we'll keep an eye on the check and chip in our share because we're light eaters." Joey looked confused, but caught on and begrudgingly agreed. Dinner went a little better this time, and the next, when he decided on the chart house, and anyone who's been knows it's a bit pricey. But each time it became a contention as to how much we really owed, and my wife would give in and we'd kick in closer to half and make up the tip. The next time he decided that we should try this place that was a little more on the pricey scale. So when our waiter addressed our table, we ordered beverage, and I excused myself to the restroom, then returned after a few minutes trying to hold back my Cheshire cat grin. So dinner goes through, our starters, mains, desserts, with Joey and Linda duly overboard in their orders, thinking they'd show us how this was done. After an admittedly good meal, our waiter finally comes back with their check, and ours, and the look of total horror on their faces was priceless, since they hadn't realized that I'd arranged for our check to be tallied separately from theirs, and apparently theirs was more than double ours. Joey had this priceless look of fury on his face that was beet red with anger, knowing that we'd totally got the upper hand, and weren't feeding into his discounted dinners. It was some months later, after some chatting across the road, that he decided to try dinner again, and as usual, we said we would meet him at the venue since they were coming from the opposite direction due to other plans. Actually meeting them with a comedy of faked lost cell phone signals, stopped traffic on the Major Deegan, or across Bronx, or a zog across the Tappan Zee. Until we finally said, "You better just go ahead and order, not sure when we'll actually get there." To this day, I don't know if they actually ate at that restaurant that night. And third story today is Clock In and Out According to Your Contract. Sure thing, boss. By Duro537. I used to work in an office in a training department. My manager was super chill and she didn't care much about my schedule and hours I was doing, as long as I did the hours my contract said and didn't take the mick. I used to come in at around 7:30 a.m. every day. I didn't start until 8 a.m., but I would come in, say hello to a few people, hello, make myself a cup of tea, maybe have a quick chat with someone. I then would start working at around 7:50 a.m., still 10 minutes before my start time. I should finish work at 4:30 p.m. because quite often I would stay until 4:45 p.m. or sometimes go home at 4 p.m., but the following day I would stay longer so my hours in a working week would still add up to what they were supposed to. My awesome manager went on maternity leave, and they gave us some a-hole wannabe manager who hasn't had a clue about us or our job. Since my manager was away, we all had to report to the a-hole. She hated us. For some weird reason, she hated our department and everyone in it. Never said why, though. Very quickly, she realized I was doing weird hours and pulled me in the office. She started saying all this crap on how I'm stealing company's time and money, how I'm unprofessional, and how she's going to put her foot down and make me work properly. Whatever that means. Well, be careful putting your foot down. Sometimes there's dog crap on the floor. I tried to listen to her and asked her questions, but she started to say that, "One more word, and you're out." Okay, cool. You're a prick. Great. So I ask, "What is it that you want me to do?" And she says, "Do the hours that are stated in your contract." Okay, cool. So to clarify, I ask, does that mean I have to start at 8 a.m. and finish at 4:30 p.m. every day? She rolled her eyes, looks at me like I'm stupid and said, "It's not that hard. Your contracted hours are what I want to see on your timesheet, not this nonsense you've been doing." Okay. Fine. See, I'm petty. Very petty. And I don't like a-holes, so I go home and sleep like a baby, knowing I will mess her up so much she will start losing her mind. Next day I come to work and wait by the clock-in machine to clock in bang on 8 a.m. Then I work my normal day, and then I go back to the clock machine and wait to clock out at exactly 4:30 p.m. I'm sure you already know where this is going, but wait, there is more. My super-friendly co-workers realized very quickly what I was doing and decided to do the same. There was 10 of us in a team, and we all gathered at the clock machine before and after the shift to clock in and out at exactly 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. The a-hole manager didn't realize for a while what was going on until she put a meeting in place at 4 p.m. Well, 4 of us were in that meeting. Comes 4:25, and all 4 of us get up while she's talking and run out to our desks. We quickly gather our stuff and run to the clock-in machine. Then 1 to 2 minutes later, we all clock out and go home. She didn't even have time to ask what we were doing. Next day, she sends us an invite for 4:30 p.m., and it gets rejected by everyone on the team. She sends a nasty email to all of us who rejected it that we will be written up for insubordination. Yeah. Let them dig their own grave. We forward the email to HR and ask for a meeting. Meeting happens. The HR lady listens to us, eyes wide open, then laughs and shakes her head and says, "Leave it with me." We go about our day. Then all clock out at exactly 4:30 p.m. Next day, a-hole manager is nowhere to be seen. HR lady sends an email to us asking us to come see her at 2 p.m. She knows how clocks work. There we are informed that a-hole manager will no longer oversee our department. Actually, she will no longer work for the company due to objectives not aligning anymore with the business, whatever that means. It means you weren't the first people to complain about her, and this was probably her last chance. Well, we went back to our own schedules. When our manager came back from maternity leave and was told what happened, she laughed and said she raised us well. And the fourth story today is Left Group Alone Without Translator by Katatao 1992. November 2024. I went on a trip to Brazil with friends Natalie, Kaylee, and Gabe. Kaylee's husband, I'm trying really hard not to call him Gaby. I'll be strong. There was a music festival there that I wanted to visit for years, but never took the opportunity solo, because I have more fun in groups, and being in a foreign country with thousands of people wasn't the best scenario for my socially awkward self. Anywho, I explained this to Kaylee and Natalie, and showed them the layout of the music artists, and they were ecstatic to go. The city is one that is near to my heart, as I had studied there for a year and became the first spot where I could be myself and learn not to care what other people think. Other people are the worst, aren't they? It's a place with beautiful beaches, views, and my host family. I was excited to introduce this place to my friends, and any time I brought up a place to visit, everyone would say, "Oh my God, can't wait to see it in person." There was never any hint of going our own ways, and we were excited to spend our trip together. In the group, I was the only person who spoke Portuguese, and asked if there was anything they had interest in visiting. Natalie and Kaylee brought up an island they found on Google that was off the coast, among some other things. Due to the island being heavily monitored due to marine preservation, the only way to get there is by fishing boat. I spent days on WhatsApp being the middleman and booking our trip, as the fishermen wouldn't be able to communicate with them in English. Everything was set. We had a date, and we were ready to go visit on Sunday morning. I sent them all details in English. This is important later. Bear with me, the pet revenge is coming. Upon our arrival in Brazil, I offered to translate as needed. When we would go to any place with a menu, Kaylee would pull out an app that translated photos. Despite the app, I still offered to translate. During our first stay, Kaylee made the comment, "I travel internationally all the time. You really just need to use Google Translate. It's not fully accurate, but between that and gestures, everybody understands just fine. You don't really need a translator." Gestures like... That comment definitely made me feel off, but I shrugged it off and still offered. Saturday, we planned to travel out of town so they could visit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school. They both have 10 years experience. This is important later. We would Uber there and back and split the cost. The plan? Only spend 4 hours max and then go to the last day of our music festival at night. When it was time to go, they didn't want to. I was told I could go back without them, but didn't want to leave my friends in a foreign city, so I declined. Oh, go on, it'll be a valuable lesson for them. 8 hours later, we finally started to head back. During the 2-hour car ride back, I was told they didn't want to go out anymore because they were too tired. I was pretty frustrated with losing half a day where I chose to not go either, as I felt I wouldn't have fun with the mood I was in, and the traffic there just wasn't worth it. We got back to our B&B, and Kaylee and Natalie came out wearing jewelry and dresses. I wasn't put off because they're the type to trade clothes a lot and go all out in it. Next thing I know, Kaylee goes, "All right, OP, our Uber is here to take us to dinner. Have fun at the festival." I'm immediately confused and remind her I wasn't going. I still have no idea where the confusion was. Again, I got frustrated and expressed it verbally. I told her the communication had been terrible over the past few days and I was over it. They told me where they were going and I could meet up with them. After that, they left and I got ready. I called my own Uber to the restaurant. The whole time I was reminded that Google Translate and gestures are all that's needed. Here's where the petty revenge comes in. Sunday morning, 4 hours in advance, I realized that the plans we made to eat with my host family and places to visit weren't going to happen. I needed to put my mental health first and get away for the day and get what I wanted out of the way. I was told they didn't need a translator and had enough fight training to take care of themselves. I messaged them that I decided to hold off on the island trip as our full trip was nearing a close, and I felt that I might not have the opportunity to visit some places. I left to go to the beach, and the first text I get is asking all the details. The night before, I received a text in Portuguese confirming all the information, so I forwarded that to them. They asked about the boat info, and I was lucky enough to be able to forward over the second text I received with that info for them in Spanish. Es bueno. Kaylee, Natalie, and Gabe were all left on their own, where they don't speak the language with texts they could decipher in Spanish and Portuguese. Kaylee was an expert in gestures and Google Translate, so I'm sure she could figure it out. That night I asked Natalie how the trip was, and they said they missed the boat because they didn't realize how far away it was. Guess she missed how to use Google Maps. Maybe not the best revenge, but I felt it was just. And the fifth and final story today is a heartfelt thank you for ruining my mental health. Enjoy your decorative herpes. By that fish bish. A few years ago, I worked for an absolute a-hole. Same. I stayed in that job for years, far longer than I really should have. But I kind of needed the job at the time and truly loved what I did. It was a great learning opportunity, as I ended up learning a lot about business above and beyond my original role. I ended up as one of the most senior members of staff, not bragging, this was a small business, so in reality, what this meant was more work and responsibility for pennies more pay. You actually got more pay. Needing this job for some level of financial stability, I did my best to ignore the condescending behavior, bullying, manipulation, micromanaging, guilt-tripping, advantage-taking, etc., all from the boss. They were an absolute delight. Nevertheless, as I was their most competent and trusted employee, there was a terse civility between the two of us, although I'm sure they did plenty of bitching about me behind my back, because they certainly did about everyone else. When I finally resigned, much to their annoyance, but I was literally done at this point, I wanted to inconvenience this POS for the way they'd impacted my mental health. I had to be careful about it, though, because taking someone to court over some slight genuinely wasn't beyond them. I'd literally seen them do it. So I opted for the pettiest option I could at the time. I bought a thank you card and wrote a heartfelt message thanking the boss for the opportunity, yada yada yada. Who is going to suspect a thank you card as an FU, right? When I tell you this card was the glitteriest card money could buy, I am not joking. Think that super fine sand-like glitter that spreads everywhere when you just look at it? The entire design on the front of the card was made in glitter, and the residual glitter from the manufacturing line clung to the inside and the back of the card. So much glitter. On my last day, the boss wasn't there because of course they weren't, so I left the card in their office, said goodbye to all my colleagues who I was genuinely going to miss because they were great people, and left on my merry way, satisfied that the creative herpes that I had left behind on that desk would have the required effect. I've been out of that place for 2 years, and one of my former colleagues has told me they're still finding glitter about the place. I take great satisfaction knowing that in some stupid, insignificant way, I have caused that a-hole at least a minor annoyance. And that brings us to the end of this week's Revenge's Ice Cream. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by signing up for my Patreon page. There's a link in the description. $1 or more a month, whatever you're comfortable supporting, gets you early access to the videos at once on Monday. There's also a link in the description to my merchandise store on Teespring, as well as various other social media. Okay. I think that's everything, so before we go, let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And this is for those of you who like to go on vacation. Do you find you like to go in the summertime when most people would? Or do you prefer to book a bit later in the year when it's quieter and probably a bit more affordable? Let me know what you think in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. This one, I believe, was in relation to, do you like your dinosaurs to be kind of more classically movie-styled? Or, as we've learned more recently, a lot of them had feathers, so would you like to see them portrayed like that in the future? And today's answer comes from Kathy Moracle. It doesn't matter how they look on TV, movies, etc. I always think of them as a lot thinner and more wiry than depicted, especially the bigger ones. They are always shown as well-fed, even plump, slightly obese. Take a look at all wild dogs, lizards, cats, such as lions, cheetahs even. They aren't likely to be well-fed. Just my opinion and observations. I think a lot of that comes from the fact that there are perhaps more predators around nowadays, especially people, for example, as predators of any creature. Whereas back then, the dinosaurs would have been the apex. They would have been the biggest ones. Oftentimes in history, they were depicted as looking very emaciated, very thin, until they realized they weren't accounting for things like, fat, body fat, cartilage, things like that. That's why if you go back to early depictions of dinosaurs, they look a lot different than what we have now. We'll learn a lot more as time goes on. Thank you very much for your answer. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for watching, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.